Good evening. We greet you this morning. We greet you tonight in the name of all that is good, all that is holy, and all that is sacred, and in the warm and loving energy of this Community Spiritual Life Center. And I'm really excited about our program tonight. And let's get ourselves grounded and go into prayer for a moment before we get into this wonderful conversation. Take a nice deep breath, let it go. Let the rest of the day float away. Know that we are here in this place right now where we have the opportunity to learn about someone else's spiritual experience and to know that as we learn about other people, we learn about ourselves, and it is our way of growing. It is another way of being our best selves by seeing what happens for other people and creating that connection and understanding that we're not alone. And we know that divine order and divine guidance prevail in every aspect of our lives. And we're just so very grateful for the opportunity to be together tonight. Thank you, God. So I'm excited about this program we're offering tonight. I came up with the title, Dollars to Diapers. My guest was, she began as a certified nursing assistant working in nursing homes and hospital settings while she was in school to become a registered nurse. And with no jobs available, she went back to school and graduated. It's a Bachelor of Science, right, in nursing in 2012. And while she was in school, she met Tony Splendorio, and he's also a registered nurse. And they in 2014, they moved to San Diego, where Betty Jo worked as a transplant step-down unit, in a transplant step-down unit, dedicating herself to serving her patients and her profession. And she was becoming curious about having a family, but she wasn't quite there yet, and she wondered if she could, be a full-time mother and a full-time nurse. And so it kind of sat there for a while, and we're going to hear more about that. But she and Tony moved to Sacramento, and then they decided at the beginning of the pandemic, if you're going to do something scary, if the world is going to end, we may as well have children. And so they started they'd had 2 children since then, and Betty Jo says her life has changed a lot, and I'm really interested to see what this is taking her quite leaps in her spirituality. So Betty Jo Splendorio, please join me. And these kinds of things I'm always hesitant to do too long of an introduction because we're going to talk about her. So welcome.
Thank you.
Now, we had quite a nice conversation the other day on the phone, and the first thing I always ask everybody, because we're going to talk about where you are spiritually now, but did you grow up with any kind of spiritual education, any kind of religion, any of that?
No, I didn't. I have to reference my dad because, am I close enough? Okay. Well, my dad, he was very clear that he was not born a sinner because he was born, and that he had it very clear in his mind that that was wrong, just by the nature of being born, that you're a sinner. So he and my mom actually moved out here to California from Indiana, and I had relatives that were religious in Indiana, but as far as my own personal experience with religion, I wasn't raised with religion at all. My parents' religion was like people. They were like people, so they were really involved in their community.
Some of those are some of the kindest, best people. My father was a C&E. He went to Christmas and Easter. He went to church, and he was one of the best people I've ever known. But he also believed that we were not born sinners either. And what a great foundation you came from there. So that must have served you later, and I'm sure we'll get into that. So. So what made you decide to become a nurse? Or is there something you'd like to talk about before that? Or what took you into becoming a nurse?
Well, I could say my own personal first encounter with God was when I was 8 years old, and I was playing baseball, and I couldn't find my jersey anywhere, and I had to go. My mom was calling for me, and so I remember I prayed, and I said, okay, God, I'd heard about prayer. I kind of knew it existed, but I'd never tried it before. So I said, okay, God, if you help me find my baseball jersey, and if I find it, then I'll know you're real. And so I looked over, and it was right there. And I was like, okay, I guess God's real. So
did you continue to pray after that?
no. I went to the baseball game.
And you just kind of let that incident be?
Yeah. I didn't come back to it because it wasn't. I didn't have any more emergencies.
Well, and of course, that's a perfect example of what we talk about here, right? Is that the thing is to learn the process of being in the presence all the time instead of waiting for the emergencies. But
Right.
I'm glad you didn't have those have emergencies.
Right.
So yeah. So
Right.
you grow up and you kind of just do your thing, and then where would you like to take up that narrative? I mean, where does what we're talking about tonight kind of start to kick in? Like in your 20s, in your 30s, or
Yeah, definitely in my 20s. I had a hard time getting into nursing school. It was all the programs were really competitive, and I was working as a nurse's aide, and I believed it could happen, but I guess I went ahead and got baptized as a Christian because I had a hairdresser, and she would pray with me, and she was really Christian, and she was accessible, and so she'd pray with me, and we would pray that I was going to get into nursing school, and I got baptized at her little church, Christian, at 27, and I really tried to make it fit, but I would never talk to anybody when I went to that church. I wouldn't talk to anybody. I was kind of just, I wasn't connected, I suppose. So, yeah, and I eventually got into nursing school, so in 2009, yeah.
But that's interesting that you came from a deep programming, a deep teaching that you were not born a sinner, and then you go into a Christian church, which is, and I think that's probably why you didn't connect, right? Is because it was a fundamentalist church, wasn't it?
I don't recall exactly what it was called. It was Church on the Hill in Vallejo, and I don't recall exactly what it was, but I didn't want to feel like I was betraying my family, because it wasn't. I don't know how to really. They're really great people. They're not religious. So I didn't want to feel like I was betraying them, and I was trying to make it work, but I didn't know how to relate to it really, and.
Well, because most traditional Christian teachings, will say that we are born in original sin, and so if you've got that initial idea in your consciousness, right there, there's that doesn't fit, right?
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
And that's a great lesson about the subconscious. I mean, that's obviously something that you really believed, and then you have people telling you that you have to, stop being a sinner so Jesus will love you and save you.
Yeah, that part, I couldn't accept that part, but all the other stuff I wanted. Like, I wanted the connection. I wanted an answer. I wanted to feel like I was good. That's why I did it. I wanted to feel like I was good. And I always believed my family was good, but just the religious piece wasn't there. And perhaps in my 20s, I started to feel really disconnected because people were starting their careers and I felt like I was behind and I was just kind of floundering a little bit.
That's been known to happen in your 20s. Right? And so you got into nursing school.
I hated that decade. I hated that decade.
You know, what was it? I can't remember when it was. It was like, I think and we'll get to this at some point, but I think when I got to about 40, I started feeling like I was 18 again, and people were saying, what are you going to do with your life? And, you know, there's this thing when you hit 18, you're leaving high school, what are you going to do with your life? And then here you are in your 20s, and you're still figuring it out.
Right.
Right? Which is actually not uncommon for people, but we have these cultural ideas.
Right.
Right? And
Right.
did you have friends who were getting married and having kids and doing all of that thing too?
Not so much because I was raised in the Bay Area.
And you'd moved.
And I had,
Yeah.
So there was a lot of floundering around me of my peers. And but they're really great people, but people weren't really that like focused on like this is what, you know, I don't even know. It was religion though seemed like it offered answers and something certain how I could be good, and I wanted that. And you know, I feel like I really tried to make it work.
So when you got into nursing school, did you kind of leave that behind, or did you still keep trying to make that work? Let me back up. Did you go to nursing school in the same place where you were going to church? Or where did you go to nursing school?
I went to nursing school at Los Medanos in Pittsburgh.
Okay, so you left that church and went to nursing school.
Yeah.
Did you try to connect with the church?
Not really, because I was so busy studying.
Well, yeah.
Yeah, and it was pretty brutal. But as far as the church, I would started praying again before tests and those emergencies again. God, please help me. God, please, I'll be good. You know, I won't drink anymore. I won't. You know, I'll drive my friends around. You know, whatever you want me to do, I'll do it. Just help me with this test. And so it was kind of like emergency God again.
I love that term. Thank you. Emergency God.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Okay, so you got through nursing school, and then is that where you met Tony, your husband?
I met him at Cal State East Bay. So
Okay.
he was starting his nursing. He was pre-licensure. So I already had my RN and was working in a hospital, but as a nurse's aide at that time. And he was pre-licensure, so he was very charming, dressed as a clown. Very first time I met him, and he had on a clown nose, the red nose, and the whole clown outfit. And so this girl behind me in line says, "You got to meet my friend. You got to meet my friend Tony. You got to meet him." And I'm like, her name's Eunice. And she comes over and introduces us, and we exchanged numbers, and I thought, he's going to take off that clown nose, right? He never did. He never took off that clown nose. I thought that was pretty cool.
The whole time you're talking to him, he didn't take it off.
Yeah.
I think I can see that in him. Yes, yeah. Okay, so you meet and you get through school and you get married. Then
Pretty
what
much.
started happening? And then you said, didn't you move to New Mexico and work for a while?
Yeah, my first nursing job was in New Mexico. My aunt kept telling me, "Betty Jo, why don't you just move?" Because it was 3 years I had been an RN and working as a CNA. But I finally, in my car, I was like, "Okay, God, wherever you want me to go, I'll go." And I would pray in the Caldecott Tunnel. And I remember I felt like I was connecting, but I was like, "Wherever you want me to go." and it ended up New Mexico. So I was there for 18 months, and Tony, I trusted that he would move with me. I felt like things were going pretty good, and I was hoping he'd move with me. So I was like, honey, I'm moving, and luckily he did. So we were there about 18 months. Then we were in San Diego, 2014. His job transferred up here in 2017, and by that time, I was working as a nurse, and I was really torn because I wanted to have a family, and my Aunt Mary always told me, Betty Jo, don't let nursing be your life. Don't let nursing be your life. And when I looked around, and I was like, wow, it's kind of what my whole life is built around, is my career. And I knew the clock was ticking, and so we were ambivalent. That's a word. We were ambivalent about it, and circled back to it, and talk about it, journal about it, take a class about it, everything. But it wasn't until January, COVID, 2020, and Tony kind of knew what was going on, and I didn't know about COVID until February or so, I believe. But
It started in the fall of 19, and then the shutdown happened in the early 2020. So
right.
No, actually, it started before Christmas. Yeah. So. That's right. Yeah.
Right. The shutdown was
keep track anymore.
March
Yeah.
2020, but it was starting around
It started
December.
before Christmas in
Yeah.
19. Yeah.
That's why it's
Yeah.
called COVID-19, because it started in 19.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So okay, so you weren't in a place where you were seeing or hearing about it, but Tony was.
He's much more into the news than I am. I don't really like to listen or read the news. So yeah. So he kind of knew, and finally he put on the calendar, get Betty Jo pregnant.
You just woke up one morning and went and looked at the calendar, and it was there.
He's very techie, so it's like on his it's like his computer reminder things. But I saw it, and I was like, yes.
Okay, this was worth the whole conversation right there.
Yeah.
Okay, so I guess he had made up his mind what he wanted.
Yeah. We were finally on the same page, and just fortunately, we're very lucky. We were able to make it happen. So we're very, very fortunate. Very, very fortunate.
Okay, so we're going to have to mention the fact that you were older than 39.
Yes, I am 43 years old. I just turned 43.
Yeah. So you had Sebastian when you were 40?
I had him when I was 40.
Okay.
Yes, and then I had Dino when I was 42. Yeah.
Okay.
I'm seasoned.
So there's several major changes. Now, you've gone through a lot of changes in your life, but here you are, you've had this career as a nurse, you're used to that, all of the kinds of things that come with the, I'm sure, because you have some authority, you have, co-workers who, respect you, you have all of that whole setup, you have some decent money because both of you are working,
Right.
and then all of a sudden, bammo, obviously the money situation changes, but
Right.
also your relationship to the world, to the outside world changed.
Right. Yeah. That changes. That changes big time because, I was telling my mom, because all the moms that had kids really young, it's like they don't understand that there's this whole world. You're an equal. And I mean, I don't want to say it like that. I don't want to badmouth it respectfully, but you're an equal and you have all these adult responsibilities and opportunities and you can make money. And it's true, once you have a baby, it all changes. Like, there are women that are still, they go right back to work after they have a baby. My experience was I didn't think I could do full-time nursing and be a mother. I didn't feel like I could do it good. I felt like I'd be half doing both. So I'm fortunate that we live in an area that's affordable, and my husband was willing to take over the reins, but like financially. But I have never worked as hard in my life as I have being a mother, and it's actually quite sad to me that I disregarded it for so long, thinking, oh, that's not real work, or, oh, the kids are just little and they're just kind of there. But it's nothing like that. It completely changes your relationships and your families, both sides. I mean, but in a good way. But as an adult, it's been challenging to find my worth sometimes, which is sad to say because I work really hard. But that's been kind of a constant theme in my life.
But it is kind of it's a constant theme that women who stay home, I mean, there's not as much respect for that, and I understand what you're saying about young people who in their early 20s start having children. They don't have the kind of perspective that you do. Right. That you were respected. You had power in your life. You had and now right. Now that all changes. And you did right. say that you still work 2 days a month. So you haven't completely let it go. So at some point you could go back.
Right.
Right.
I'm keeping my foot in the door.
Right.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah. So what does this all have to do with your spirituality? Because it's like at some point you and Tony showed up here. What right. So what brought this about?
Right. Well, we've been trying to find a place where we could grow, and we were coming on and off pre-pandemic. I should reference that we bought our house in 2018, and that was like, okay, this is where we're planting. And once we bought our house there, we tried we came here infrequently, and but we were both still working full time, and we would pray, but I feel like since we had a child, our heart really, like, we're kind of dependent on it more now for community and connection. And fast forward to the pandemic, we were just watching online, and it's a completely different experience when you're watching online. It's enough to draw you in, but it's so different than when you're actually here in person. So probably when I got pregnant with my second son, because my world's changed so much, we're trying to find a place where, like, we could both feel like we belong, but really it's for structure, trying to get some structure.
But yeah, I mean, but that structure, you've got to feel comfortable where you are. And it's like, I think you said that Tony actually grew up in a religious home, right?
Yes.
And so what was the I'm not trying to pry into your private life, but I mean, what was the conversation about, you were obviously looking for a spiritual home.
Right.
I mean, this is what this sounds like. So what was that conversation? It's like, and since you didn't have any background and he had this really structured background in religion, what kind of conversation was that?
Mostly trial and error, because I was trying to get him to go to church, and I was still a Christian, and I was trying to get him to go to Christian churches, and he wouldn't come. And I said, I don't want to do this by myself. This was, probably San Diego days. He wouldn't come with me. I was like, this man is stubborn. So, but he said, he's, yeah, I know. So he wouldn't, I wanted someplace where we could go together. I didn't feel like it was going to happen if it was just one of us going, oh, I'm doing this. When you get married, you agree to share your lives. And I know his heart is so big, and I just needed to see it get plugged in somewhere. And, we shopped around churches here too in Sacramento, and it was probably not last Christmas, but the Christmas before in 2021. And he says, I want us to go to Spiritual Life Center. That's where I want us to go.
How did you find us? Were you just looking online at different things?
Yeah.
I mean, you were just shopping?
We went to we found a Unity Church it's by West Sac that I don't remember what it's called.
Oh, there's a religious science or a Science of Mind church out there.
Maybe it's
CSA.
Yeah,
Okay.
Center of Spiritual Awareness.
Which teaches the same thing we do with a different vocabulary, but yeah.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. Okay, so you went there.
Yeah.
Okay.
And then and we weren't plugged in, and then we came here, like when we bought our house too, because this was closer.
Oh, okay. So you live in the general area then?
Yes.
Oh, okay. Okay. So then you did. So did you come a couple times, and then Tony just said he wanted to come here, or was it you watching us online?
We would come. I would say come a couple times prior to the pandemic, like pop in, and then we were watching online as well. But maybe a little nervous about, well, how do we get started? I mean, and maybe not feeling like we were in a place where we could commit time-wise, because it was still all about the job. And but after the pandemic, we were like, okay, we want to find a place where we can grow, and this just kept coming up.
Okay, so you keep saying that you've said, I think twice now, that you've wanted a place where you could grow. Grow in what way?
I feel like, are you like trying to get me in? No.
No, because that would never have been, when I was looking for a spiritual connection, that was not the word I would have used for me.
Oh.
So I'm curious. Yeah.
Okay.
No, for me it was like finding a way to channel this stuff that was already coming through me. I needed a place to do this.
Wow.
So it was. This just didn't start when I was in my 20s or something. I've always known that I was supposed to be doing something like this.
Wow.
So, for me, finding the right place to be, it only took me 60-something years, where a place where I would fit in. So don't beat yourself up, by the way.
Right.
But for me, it wasn't about finding a place to grow. So I'm very serious. It's like, what does that mean to you? Because my experience was so very different.
Wow, that's a great question. I guess for me, it's all about, I'm really motivated to do it, truthfully, for my kids, because I know if I'm doing okay, then they'll be okay. And I found that I'm that much more dependent on people, which is a lovely thing. But since I've had them, I've found I'm way more oriented towards people. And maybe it's being in my 40s as well, because I was kind of isolated a bit in my 30s. Like, I would work and work out and, pay all the bills and try to make everything perfect. But now I'm like, screw perfect. I'm imperfect, obviously. and just kind of let it go and let God. And so at this point, it's just about connection and feeling connected to God and spirit. And it seems like you have a connection.
Oh yeah, I was born plugged in, so it's it sounds to me that what you're wanting to do is grow your heart.
Yes.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, grow your heart, and because I was thinking as you're saying about feeling isolated and sort of. I know almost everybody that I know that works in the medical profession, there is this distance, there's this wall you have to put up, especially when you're dealing with people who are ill or going to die. All of that trauma that you experience on a day-to-day basis, of course you have to shut something down to do that all the time.
You have to.
And so that growth is also, I mean, and how do you raise children really well when you have that part of you shut down? So it sounds to me like, you and Tony wanted to grow your hearts.
Yes, that is true. That is true. And I don't have the responsibility of full-time work on my shoulders right now, and that's freed up a lot as far as mental space and what I can focus on, what I choose to focus on. I mean, it's a game. My life's completely different. I have a new life. It's totally different than the life I had 3 years ago. So that's kind of great.
And you like it, right?
I love it.
Yeah.
I love it. I love it.
So, what's your relationship with your emergency God now? Do you use your emergency God, or do you use your...
I love that
we all use
question.
emergency God. I mean, come on, let's get real. But it sounds like, and early on, it sounds like that's what you mostly used.
Yes.
And so
yes.
now what's it like? I mean, what's your spiritual life like now? Is it what's it like?
Right. Well, I'm pretty much what you see is what you get now. And I do attribute that to believing in God and having a spiritual connection. And I don't always feel it, but I try to remember that Spirit's with me always. And I do forget sometimes. And I still get angry and I still yell at my kids. Unfortunately, I'm really, trying to work on that. But it's hard. It's really hard. In those moments, when I feel like things are maybe getting a little out of my control, I will still call God and I will say, God, show me a sign. Give me something. Help me. Just hummingbirds. God connects with me through hummingbirds. And when I see one, I'll feel connected to God and Spirit. And I have crystals. Sometimes I charge them at the full moon. But I don't have the time to pray as much as I would like to, but I pray at night. Coming here, we're just try to stay consistent with coming here and trusting that God's got me even today. God's got me.
Well, there's this idea that if you're going to have a spiritual life, you have to pray all the time. And prayer, I think we had this conversation earlier, is praying and connecting is different for every person. Mm-hmm. Like one person will do that sitting and meditating for 30 minutes twice a day in a certain position and, or whatever. And that doesn't work for me. I have my own way of doing it. And the picture I got in my head when you were talking is I've seen you in service where you're sitting there and I guess, holding Dino and with your eyes closed with your face, cheek on his head. And that must be something that happens at home too. And those have got to be those precious spiritual moments. They're not just, hey, I'm here with my kid. Those have got to be.
Right. Oh, 100%. I mean, oftentimes I'm resting when I'm here because I'm like, do you know we take in so much stimulus through our eyes and like watching stuff? And sometimes if you can just shut that off, you can hear things better. And that's, I know that because I had my second child without any medications. I had an unmedicated birth with him at 42 years old. I'm pretty proud of this. And I had my eyes shut the entire time because I said, this is too much for me to take in. And I just need to get right here. And that's all that matters. Is all these people, they're helpers. This is my show. I'm doing this. And I was able to have an unmedicated natural delivery, which I think is pretty awesome.
That's one of the best spiritual connecting stories I've ever heard. That is amazing, and that's beautiful.
Thank you.
You know, I remember there was one Sunday a while ago. I don't know what, we must have been at the end because people were standing. I was up here, so it must have been towards the end of the service, or maybe I was doing meditation. I don't remember. No, people were standing, so it must have been towards the end of the service. And I looked over, and you were there with and Dino was asleep, and you had your cheek on top of his head. And Tony was standing, and he reached over, and he just kind of touched your head. And it was one of the sweetest moments. That it was like, talk about just that connection all the way through, So it has this spiritual connection that you have opened up into. Obviously, it's had some sort of effect on your relationship. I mean, you and Tony.
Yes. Oh yeah. Yes. We're doing it together. We're solid and cohesive in that way, and we pray at night at the dinner table, and he's really great at prayer. So if anybody needs prayer, he's really great at it. Must be that background of his. But it's we realize that there's still a lot of growing to do, but we're very, very pleased if we can just take a second and step back and go, wow, look at what we're doing. It's pretty incredible. It's pretty incredible. I feel like God had me the whole way through all that time when I was just looking for my family, or it felt like such a crisis. Like, am I going to be a mom or not? And I feel like now it's in the rearview mirror, and I go, wow, God had a plan for me this whole time. So, things kind of in hindsight, you can kind of understand them. So
it's easy to look back and see your footsteps and footprints and see where they came from and where they led. It's like I was probably born knowing I should be a minister. Okay, so I was ordained when I was 60. I started studying when I was 25.
That's so awesome.
Well, and see,
I think that's why I'm so drawn to you, because that's so awesome.
Well, I mean, and the interesting part about it is I was telling the story to somebody someday because I got through 3 years of training, and then the last year kind of dissolved for reasons, and then I just went about my life, and I still continued my metaphysical work and everything, but I had to work and support myself and blah blah blah, and I don't know, I actually was sitting in church one day listening to Jim Lee when it was Unity of Christ Unity, and I heard a voice that said, "It's time. Call Blaine and ask him if he'll ordain you." I hadn't, and so this was the man who he was a fairly big deal in Unity, and then his mom went independent, and I called him up, and I hadn't talked to him for like 30 years or 15 years. He said, "Yeah, come on down. I'll ordain you." I'm like, okay. So I went down, and it was an empty church. It was his wife and his sister and him in their stoles, and my husband was in the audience, and I was wearing a sundress that really offended his wife, which was really cool. And she never liked me for 40 years, that woman. And, and they ordained me. And then I just got in a plane and came back home.
What year was that?
2009.
Wow.
And what happened to you in 2009?
2009, I couldn't find any nursing job.
Right.
I was a CNA working. Yeah. I was a nurse working as a CNA.
Yeah. Yeah. And then it took me 3 years to find a place to be.
Yeah.
And and because it was such my education was so screwy, and I was ordained by this independent New Thought church that was run by very, very, very well-known, very prominent people in the Unity movement, but still, and with Reverend James here, he's the reason I'm where I am right now, because he said, "Go for it." But
That's great.
okay, so
Shout out to James.
Yeah, and the thing is that wasn't me having babies, because that was never my path. But it's the same. It was 34 years from the time I started studying for the ministry until I was ordained, and so you were following that same sort of path,
Right.
And it's like putting that one foot in front of the other. And I can tell you how often I felt lost and floundering. And what am I doing? I know I'm supposed to be a spiritual teacher of some sort. I could not find my place to do it.
Right.
I could not find it. So,
Right.
we all have our calling, and it's really clear to me that you and Tony are meant to be parents.
Oh,
I mean,
thank
it just,
you.
right? It just, it
Aw,
leaks out
thank
all over. I
you.
mean, it's just, yeah. I mean,
Thank
you just,
you.
and of course, we're just so thrilled to have, the way to make connection to SLC is bring babies.
Yeah. Yeah. No, and there is something to be said for that when you have something you feel like you need to do, or maybe it just won't stop. It won't let up.
Exactly.
And even you don't know how, or it just seems so far off, or like that's never going to happen for me. It happens for everybody else. Doesn't happen for me. But I feel like if it's that's the other thing, is just letting things go. Like I had to just let the outcome go, and I was praying to like the highest good. Go, okay, maybe I could have a very nice life without children, because that's a valid life too, and be a wonderful auntie and invest in these kids that are already here. And I saw that, I just see so many children that they crave love and attention, and I had to release the outcome, and that was freeing. That was freeing. I mean, did you release your outcome for?
Oh, I had to, because I could see no way to do it. I mean, so I just, and I was single for 22 years, and so I was working I was just doing, to support myself. And I don't like working for other people, so I would keep a job for 2 years and then find something else, and I didn't have a career. So at 52, I decided that I was going to be single for the rest of my life. So I decided to be really crazy. I was on unemployment, and I went back to school. And then, to be really practical, I got a degree in English. Yeah. And I met my husband during my last semester.
Wow.
And, so then we got married, and then I actually got a real job for a while that paid better than anything I'd ever had, and oh my God, I hated it. That whole corporate thing, imagine me in a cubicle, guys. And,
No, don't box me in.
And so I left that job, went into another one, and worked there for about 6 months, and I actually walked out in the middle of the day. It was so horrible. And that's not something I ever would have done in my life. And so then I spent a year sitting and crocheting, and then I went back to school to get a master's degree in English.
Oh, yes.
Because I thought, well, no, if I had an MFA, I could teach at university level. I could teach online. If Jim and I wanted to travel, I could do that. But it was during that master's, while I was working on my master's, that I heard the voice.
Wow.
So on a Sunday, I graduated with my MFA. The next morning, I got on a plane and flew to Mesa, Arizona, and was ordained. So I got all of that taken care of.
Wow.
I had totally given it up. And in fact, I realize now that as much as I said I wanted to be a minister, I was running like hell the whole time away from it. With good reason. Because once you're here, But I will tell you that if I had been, and this may be true for you as a mother, if I had been ordained in my 30s, I would be a completely different kind of minister person.
Oh, 100%.
Yeah. And so I am glad I didn't do it then.
Yeah.
because I know that I am much better at what I do now.
Right.
And and for you, because you were working, look at all the stuff you worked through before you started having kids.
Oh, yeah. And I mean, I think you're doing a great job up here too. And it's kind of fun that you reach out to the church and kind of bring people in. And it's fun to watch your little bloopers up here sometimes. But you and James are you guys are a very nice compliment to each other, and you're so different in your approaches, but you complement each other very well.
Yeah, it's an interesting combination, and we, on some level, it's like in this world, we're very different. We live very different lives. We're both very private people, hardly know anything about each other, and yet when we come up here, or like when I'm writing a meditation, I have no idea what he's writing in his talk. We both know what the music is, but I have no idea I know his talk title, but I don't know what he's going to do. And I can't tell you how many times I get up there, I do meditation, and then he'll even have words that I used in the meditation. And I did one where there's a thing in the Bible that says, your name is written in the palm of my hand. And I did a meditation that had that, and then James actually had that in his talk, that same quote.
Wow.
So there's obvious. He came in the fall of 2012. I came in April of the next year.
Oh, wow.
And I had tried to come here, and it was like, it just wasn't working. And then he came, and then the door opened.
Right.
And then it was a while before I started participating and actually acting as a minister. But there's some higher level, higher energetic connection that he and I have that I believe we've both been brought here to do this work at this time. And it's
That's
like you
powerful.
and Tony have been brought together to do what you're doing at this time.
Right. Yeah. I don't think I would have appreciated being what it takes to be a parent if I was in my 20s or in my 30s, because it takes so much focus on them and off of yourself. And I'm grateful that I have the experience to know I'm not missing out on anything, like with having my kids. Like, that's where it's at. So I can bring that more to them. And like you said, something kind of opened up. The timing of, Tony and I becoming more regular attendees. We were trying, and, that's something opened up. So I guess that's spirit, God. Yeah. Oh, no,
I lost my thought. But it's, I really did lose the thought I had, and it was, of course, absolutely brilliant. I don't remember what it was. But the thing is that we're here. I think the thing that I love to teach, and I have to remind myself all the time, is here I am right now, and that here I am right now is the only place I can be, and the only thing I can be doing is here right now. That's all there is.
right.
And so when we get into that idea of coulda, shoulda, woulda, or will it, can it, should it,
Right.
I know what I was going to say is that I have seen, of course, I had a lot of friends who got either pregnant in high school, and had babies, or, got married right out of high school and started having babies. And I watched so many of them just lose their entire identity. And I think, and I see a lot of people, and I think I'm just wondering, having children at later in life,
Right.
you're not so likely to do that.
I'm not so likely to do that with my own kids, but I am less involved in other children's lives.
Yeah.
And there's just no energy or time or resources to do it. So bless those people whoever is willing to listen to a kid or set a kid straight if you see a kid doing something they shouldn't be doing, or just reaching out to the youth and I mean they need it. Like, kids, they want that. Even if they get mad at you, they need to be redirected, and they want that. And yeah, I think it's there's a lot of people like you here mentoring me, fostering this growth That's huge. That's a huge outreach here. And thank you for this.
You're welcome.
I mean, I've never had anybody else.
I never did either. That's why I do it.
That's amazing.
Yeah. Most of what I do for people here is because I never got it.
Wow.
So.
Wow.
So I know what it feels like to feel pulled towards something and not have any support. So that, I was never going to say that publicly. Okay. Yeah, it's, no, yeah. So that's, and the other thing is it's like, this whole thing about not having time to do this or that. One of the reasons, especially Unity churches or New Thought churches, tend to have an older congregation is because this takes work. This spiritual teaching is one of the hardest ones you will find because it is do your own work. We're not going to tell you what to do, how to do it, or when to do it. So you have to do your own work, and that takes time, that takes focus. And when you've got a career and kids and bills and all that, and so I am so thrilled to see you, and we have another younger couple who are at least putting your foot in the pool, and because the most important, what I do here, and I've had people say, why do you do it, is because the most important thing to me is this teaching continue. And you're that continuation. You're really important. And I don't think you know how important you are.
Okay.
And so that is, and not to put pressure on you, I'm just saying that we have got to have this continuation. And so we're so thrilled to see people under 50. And I joke about it, but it's kind of true, right? Well, it's totally true. And so, and I was very fortunate to get into this when I was in my 20s. Mm-hmm. But most people, you're at about the age that a lot of people just come into this teaching. It's very common for people in their 40s because they're starting to have a little bit, somehow you did a little backwards. I mean, you don't have as much time. But, the thing is you're coming in and you're sitting here and that little boy is immersed in the music and the energy, and to watch him just looking around, and, that's doing something to his consciousness. And whatever you all in the youth ed are doing with the little ones over there, you're working on their consciousness too. So it's not just you and Tony who are growing your hearts. You're growing your babies' hearts too.
That's good to hear.
Yeah.
Yeah. And I mean, shout out to the youth ed, and it's a lot of work.
Yeah.
And Bastian's, he loves being here, and this was the first place where he really started to, he just loves it here. And thank you.
So we are about out of time. Do you have any last comments that you would like to make? Any particular thing that we didn't talk about, or are you feeling complete?
I feel complete.
Okay.
Yeah.
Thank you. Thank you, Betty Jo. And by the way, Tony and the children are on the other side. So if you want to, they can come in for the prayer. I don't think you want them on camera, do you? Do you care?
Oh, I don't care.
Okay. Well, we'll just go ahead and bring them in now. Yeah. Okay. So you can go. Okay. So I have a couple of announcements. It's dangerous going that way, but okay. So next week, I was trying to think of something different to do, and okay, nobody's going to pay attention to me. I'm going to talk to the people online. Okay. Well, no. Let me do these. No, let me do the announcements first. Okay. So next week we're going to do a talking stick circle, and I was trying to think of what to do, and I realized that there's this sort of idea that the pandemic's over. We should be getting over it. But there was a lot of stuff that happened to a lot of people. So what we're going to do is we're going to sit down here in a circle, and we're going to do a talking stick, and we're going to talk about how the pandemic improved your life. So come and, what's a good story? What did you learn? I can't tell you what I got out of it. And so that's what we're going to do next week. And then I just want to do a quick shout out. We have 3 podcasts, and some of you actually know how to find podcasts. We've got the Sunday Experience podcast, which is always the Sunday talk. There's that one. And then there is the Interfaith Connection, which Reverend Dave Lyman and Rachel Lyman do, and they do that once a month. And then I do a weekly one called Discovering Spirit Within, and I didn't realize when I named it Discovering Spirit In that it was DSW, which is a shoe store. But anyway, so there's a weekly Discovering Spirit Within, and of course you can go to our website and find it by just scrolling down, or of course if you are a podcast listener, then you can find it on your app. And I just want to remind you of all of our podcasts. And now we have the opportunity to support Spiritual Life Center. And if you're online, you can text SLC Love to 44321, and you can make a donation. Click that way. You can go to our website, click on Donate. Of course, you can always mail in an offering. There's many, many ways to support Spiritual Life Center. If you are watching us online, you can click. Let's wait. You can click on subscribe. Like, follow, and whatever else the app might offer you to do and to support Spiritual Life Center. So now, let us say our prayer, our offering prayer together. Divine love, as me, blesses and multiplies all that I am, all that I have, and all that I circulate. Thank you, God.
Thank you, 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 thank you. Thank you, thank you, thank you. Pouring down, your love is pouring down. Your love is pouring down. Your love is pouring down. Thank you.
Thank you so much for coming tonight, and let us make our circle down here and do our prayer for protection.
It's great.